we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Tampa City Councilman Luis Viera. It's a great, let me see if I can, should I take this out? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, I never. Well, let me. I always like holding mics, that's just me, but I'll do it. Okay, Tampa City Councilman Luis Viera, it's a great pleasure to be here today. We are here today for our City of Tampa Purple Heart Day. Today, August 7th, is Purple Heart Day. We will have some wonderful speakers here from the community and in leadership to talk about what this day means to them. I first wanted to recognize, before we begin, some individuals who are here. I see we have here our Chairman of Tampa City Council, Guido Maniscalco, who's here. We have, of course, State Senator Jay Collins, who's here, himself a Purple Heart recipient. We have here Sean Sintel with the Office of United States Congresswoman Jane Castor, Mr. David Garcia with the Office of Congresswoman Laurel Lee. I see we have here retired 13th Judicial Circuit Court Judge Ralph Stoddard, who's here. I saw him there, a Vietnam veteran himself. We have here with Tampa Police Department Chief Calvin Johnson, who's here, among many others who are here and will be speaking. But before we begin, we wanted to start off with a prayer to be given by my good friend, Mr. Matt Hall, who is an attorney at Hill Ward Henderson prior to attending law school. Matt served as an infantryman in the U.S. Army, deploying to Korea in 2003 with the 4th Infantry. So, Mr. Hall, if you could come up, sir. There you are.
All right, thank you, Councilman Viera. If you'll join me and bow our heads. God of strength and resilience, on this Purple Heart Day, we celebrate the valor of our service members and our service member brothers and sisters. We remember the ones who risked their lives, those who returned to us, some healed, others still healing, and those who sacrificed their lives, now abiding with God on that side of heaven. God of broken bodies and shattered souls, we pray for our brothers and sisters injured in this time of war during their service. May their stories be lifted and spirits elevated. May the light of the divine be a balm to the injuries marked on their souls and hearts. May the winds of the Spirit build their resilience. May we, as your children, Holy One, advocate for their healing and their support. Allow us to see our place in the well-being of all our neighbors, and especially today, the ones who are wounded and among the brave. Amen.
Thank you very much, Matt. We appreciate that. Okay, next I'd like to introduce our mayor of the city of Tampa, Jane Castor. Prior to being a mayor of our city of Tampa, she served for over 3 decades with Tampa Police Department, including being chief of our police. Mayor Castor, and I can say this from personal experience, is a very, very strong supporter of our veterans and does a lot here, obviously, for our first responder, being a former cop herself. Mayor Castor, come on up, ma'am.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Louis. What an honor. First of all, I want to say thank you to Councilman Luis Viera for all that he does in support of our military, our veterans, and ensuring that we remain a military community. And I think that's something that we should all be proud of. We have many that behind me that have served with valor and have actually won the Purple Heart, or received, not won, received the Purple Heart recognition. But we support all of the men and women that serve not only our nation and do everything in their power to ensure that the entire world stays peaceful, but to make sure that we retain those rights that we enjoy each and every day, that we enjoy to a level that oftentimes we take them for granted. So I take time every day in my life to remember the service and the sacrifices of the men and women in our military and of our first responders as well. And it is a great honor whenever I can be in their presence and whenever I can recognize their service to our community. You will hear from those individuals that have shown that courage and that commitment and that dedication that led sometimes posthumously to the awarding of a Purple Heart. So this is a wonderful day for us, not only to recognize, again, the valor, the commitment, the service of the men and women from our community, but for us to come together as citizens, as civilians, to say thank you. Thank you for your service each and every day, again, to ensure that we remain a free country and that we are able to enjoy those freedoms that so many have given their lives, that have sacrificed year after year to make sure that we are a safe and free country. We are going to raise the Purple Heart flag here just in a couple of minutes, but I want everyone to know that we celebrate every day as a military community, and we have lit our entire city up in purple since Friday evening. And all of our buildings, our Riverwalk, everything will be lit up in purple all the way through this evening. So whenever anyone asks a question, someone asks, why is that building lit up? Why is that fountain lit up? That we can share that story of those individuals that have dedicated their lives in service to our community. So again, thank you, Councilman Viera. Thank you, Councilman Maniscalco. I also want to recognize the Tampa Fire Rescue Union president here that is in support and service of our military and our community, Nick Stocco. So thank you all again for taking time to come out and recognize the brave men and women that protect us every day. God bless.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for your leadership. And before we go to our next speaker, by the way, raise your hand if you're a Purple Heart recipient, because I know we have some here. You know, we have many behind me, of course. Well, God bless you all, and we mean that. You know what we honor here today, we hear a lot about the things that divide us a lot as Americans, but I always believe that for every one thing that divides us, there's probably 50 things that brings us together, and this is certainly one of the biggest ones here today. We also honor those who are no longer with us here today, from, you know, organizations like the Military Order of the Purple Heart, Chapter 705, and different ones throughout the Tampa Bay and Florida area. I know we have Mr. Guy Patterson and others here with us. I think about people like a gentleman who passed on about 2 years ago, Gerard Abbott, who was such an amazing man, and of course, a gentleman who passed on not too long ago, who many of us know and remember, Mr. Tim Reed, who was such an amazing individual. So we remember them and we keep their loved ones always in our prayers. Next, it is my great pleasure to introduce State Senator Jay Collins, who last year, like I was telling him, was here as an attendee, and today he is here as a Florida State Senator. Senator Jay Collins is from District 14, is a highly decorated Army Special Forces combat veteran and a Purple Heart recipient with over 2 decades of service in uniform. He has answered our nation's call time and time again, even serving 5 years as an active duty Green Beret following the amputation of his leg. It is my great pleasure to introduce my friend, State Senator Jay Collins.
I'm going to have to drop this down just a little bit so I'm not talking out of my forehead. It is wonderful to be here tonight. And it is truly, I'm thankful from the bottom of my heart to live in a community that truly understands what our veterans do in the community, what that strength, that courage, that honor really means. And thank you. This is not a partisan issue. Our veterans are part of our community, and we lead from the front. So thank you for being here today. Since the very birth of this nation, America has been driven and protected by the citizen soldier, leaders who understood the power of neighbors helping neighbors. Our forefathers, they volunteered to stand against tyranny from McCain across the sea. They fought for and created a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. A nation forged with a daring belief that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These ideas, ideals, and principles were there as Washington and our founding fathers forged this nation at Yorktown. They were there in the earthworks of New Orleans. They were there at Little Round Top as the very fabric of this nation was tested. They were there among the poppies of Flanders Fields, the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc, frozen at the Chosin River, soaked in the rice paddies of Vietnam, and for over 2 decades in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan. And my friends, they are here today, resolute and resounding. General Washington established the Purple Heart, then known as the Badge of Military Merit, on August 7th, 1782, to recognize meritorious service in action during our nation's war for independence. Today, the Purple Heart is reserved for military service members wounded or killed in action, and on this day, we pay tribute to those men and women who have suffered and sacrificed so much for the nation that we love. It is therefore fitting that General Washington is on our current Purple Heart medal in its present form. He is an American hero whose resolute courage helped found this nation we are blessed to call home. Today, let us honor and remember the courage, candor, commitment, and sacrifice that led to these people being awarded the Purple Heart. But my friends, here's the part that I want you to take away. Take time to check on the families of those gone too soon. Take time to check on your veterans. Take time to make sure they're okay. Many still worry about those gone too soon, and they feel guilty for it. We as a community must stand beside them shoulder to shoulder, and if need be, help get them the support that they need, but we've got to be present first. Lastly, I say this as a two-time Purple Heart recipient. I, like so many others, would gladly risk all that I am and all that I could ever be to protect this nation again for our next generation. This nation was, is, and always will be worth the sacrifice. May God bless each of you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Deo presto liber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Next, it is my great pleasure to introduce, frankly, one of the finest men I've had the pleasure of knowing throughout my life. Craig Gross is a Gold Star parent and vice president of Gold Star Awareness Incorporated. He is the father of the late Corporal Frank Gross, who was killed in action on July 16th of 2011 while serving our country in Afghanistan. Craig is one of the finest individuals I know, a man of faith in God and a man of faith in our country and a man of faith in his fellow man. Please help me in welcoming our good friend, Mr. Craig Gross. There you are.
Good morning. Yes, I am the proud father of Corporal Frank Robert Gross, who was killed in action 16 July 2011 in Afghanistan in an IED attack. I am carrying his Purple Heart and Bronze Star today, and he was awarded that posthumously at Arlington National Cemetery on his birthday, 19 August 2011. Frankie was actually killed in action on the same day that his uncle was killed 19 years earlier, Major Mike Farmer, who was a helicopter pilot for the United States Army, highly decorated Vietnam veteran. They were both killed on the same day. So our family actually has 2 Gold Stars, not just one. This Purple Heart represents a token from our nation that says, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your courage. And thank you for your bravery. And hence, I want to say publicly this morning, thank you to all the Purple Hearts, and especially thank you to my son, Corporal Frank Robert Gross, who paid the full measure for our country so that we, as a people, can be free and remain free. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Craig. And before, I wanted to make sure, did I miss any elected official representative? I noted Congresswoman Laura Lee, Congresswoman Jane Castor's office. Senator Marco Rubio, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just making sure. Next, it is my great pleasure to introduce First Sergeant William Epps with a Military Order of the Purple Heart, Lakeland Chapter 535, and a Purple Heart recipient who will be speaking to us today from the heart. Come on forward, sir.
Good morning. Airborne. Greetings on behalf of John Hillary, Commander, and the Patriots of Lakeland Chapter 535, serving Polk County and Eastern Hillsborough County.
And if I may,
Thank you. On this occasion, let us remember that the freedoms that we enjoy and sometimes take for granted, they come at a great cost. A large portion of this cost is paid by the women and men that have been wounded in combat. This cost is also felt by their family, their friends, and the very communities our patriots come from. These patriots of diverse backgrounds that have made duty to their oath and to each other their priority must not be forgotten. May we continue to support the families of our patriots who are no longer with us, but forever in our hearts, and those that are members of our community. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, sir. We appreciate that. Next, it is my great pleasure to introduce Lieutenant Commander Bryant Cameron Stern. Lieutenant Commander Bryant Cameron Stern is a Purple Heart recipient and a representative of the Greater Tampa chapter of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. He is a multi-tour combat veteran from the United States Army and Navy with over 25 years of experience in the special operations and intelligence communities. He has 20 years assigned to various joint special operations and task forces, SEAL teams, and national level intelligence agencies. He leads Project Dynamo, a veteran-led donor-funded international rescue organization that rescues Americans and its allies from dangerous locations where the United States government does not have access or presence. Sir, come on forward.
Thank you. Mayor Castor, Councilman Viera, my good friend Senator Jay Collins, honored guest veterans, fellow Purple Heart recipients, and most importantly, the Gold Star families. Thank you for all being here today. I'm honored to share a stage with these great, brave heroes and leaders. I also wanted to give a big shout out to my good friend Gerard Abbott. He passed away a few years ago. He was a landmark in Tampa, in the Tampa veteran community, the Tampa Purple Heart community, and we miss him dearly to this day. He was an amazing, amazing man that I looked up to. My name is Brian Stern. I'm the founder of Project Dynamo. We're a Tampa-based, veteran-led, donor-funded international rescue organization. We work overseas where the government isn't, and it's kind of our continuation of service. I've been doing this since 1998, so I don't know how many years that is, but it's too many. We've rescued over 6,000 men, women, children, and babies from terrible places, from Ukraine to Sudan to even Hurricane Ian. We're either the first in or we're the last resort. I'm also a Navy Reserve officer here at MacDill. We gather here today to celebrate the National Purple Heart Day, which is a special day for so many across the country. To me, this is all about the literal blood spilt by our brothers and sisters in arms who answered their country's calling. They showed up, they volunteered, they were present, and got hurt, and sometimes died. It's the oldest medal in the military, and it's very simple, the Purple Heart. It's all to get the Purple Heart, you have to spill your own blood. That's it, at the hands of the enemy. Americans and especially our brave military, we've always brought the fight to our enemies, to our enemies of freedom and democracy, wherever it may be. We've always led when others will follow. Americans pray for peace, but we're prepared to make war if needed in defense of American values and freedom. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, we make up the best of America. Once we're veterans, we continue to lead. The Purple Heart Medal recognizes the sacrifice made by brave men and women who are injured in pursuit of our nation's bidding against our enemies. Nobody knows this more than the Gold Star families. There's thousands of men and women who've received the Purple Heart. They come from every city, every walk of life. They're black, they're white, they're poor, they're rich, they're country bumpkins, they're city kids. The IEDs, the artillery, the bombs, the guns, the shrapnel, they don't really distinguish where we're from. They're agnostic. The last 2 years of my life I've spent in terrible war zones like Ukraine, rescuing innocent civilians, Americans, and our allies. And again, fighting for freedom and democracy, defending our values, doing what Americans have always done. Veterans are like priests. I always say this, it's a calling. You know, cops are cops. Mayor Castor, when she was a police officer, cops are called to protect, firemen are called to save, veterans are called to fight. It's what we do. We wear the cloth of the nation on our very backs, and we bleed through that cloth with our own blood. And sometimes we don't come home. And every Purple Heart recipient that I know considers every day a blessing. We always have I always tell everybody I live every day like 9/11, like September 12th, because so many people have died since 9/11. So many people have sacrificed. So many people have not come home. When in combat, no one's political. There is no Republican in a foxhole. There's no Democrat in an ambush. We're just men and women trying to stay alive, doing what we need to do to protect our friends, to defend the nation, to preserve our way of life. It's not a political thing. It's not a partisan thing. It's an American thing. Paul Revere was not a Republican, and he wasn't a Democrat either. He was just an American fighting tyranny and oppression. Veterans have fought this fight. Our service members today continue that fight. We show up. That's the big thing. We show up. Americans show up when America is needed. We always lead. We always lead. We're the leaders of the free world, and there's a reason why. There's a reason why people flock to this country and our countrymen don't flock somewhere else. There's a reason why. It's because this country is the greatest nation in the world. Why? Because of our veterans who fought and kept it that way. For Purple Heart recipients who shed their own blood. Guys like Jay Collins, who gave up his own leg and got clipped in his arm. My good friend Mike Delancey, who leads Wounded Warriors Abilities Ranch. He was a young Marine that got sniped, and he's forever bound to a wheelchair. He served the nation, and we give up our bodies. We're busted up, but we continue to fight. We continue to lead in our communities, in whatever way, in business, in politics, like Jay, or what have you. That's what the veteran community is all about, and nobody understands that better than the Purple Heart community, because we put our own blood in the game. In the game. Our great nation needs veterans. We need patriots. And we sometimes forget that the veteran community is what allows us to argue. We're allowed to beat each other up a little bit on all these different issues because of veterans. Because of veterans. We'll always show up. Veterans will always be there, in uniform, out of uniform. I know right now that if there was a problem, that my good friend Jay, or any of the guys behind me, or any of the veterans in the audience, my good friend Judge Ralph Stoddard, I know that if there was a problem, in uniform or out of uniform, we will always show up. We will always defend the community. We will always fight for America, and we will always fight for our values. Never forget, and always remember. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, if everyone would please, we'll begin now with the flag raising. But I wanted to first, before we do that, just thank everybody for coming out here today. Like was said, this is one of the real big ties that binds us as Americans. And there is so much to be proud of in our country, and I think we all agree with a very simple and yet very true and deep sentiment, which is this is the greatest country in the history of the world, and we would never rather live anywhere else than the United States of America in the year 2023. So, and also, if all Purple Heart recipients could also join us for the flag raising as well, please. Thank you.